So right now I'm going to introduce the next panel, which we're very excited about as well, to learn a bit more about the financial sector. So I would like to invite our colleague Phumelele Zwane from AXA to join me on the stage. Please, Phumelele.
Good morning. I'd like to ask Nick and my colleague from Standard Bank to join me in front. Good morning, Sanibonani. I think before I start today and we get into the nick of our panel discussion, I think firstly, I'd like to first acknowledge and recognize, I think, a few of the AXA executives that have been part of this conference and that have supported us in AXA in Africa one way or the other. I think as the ethics team, we literally have felt like fed the click this week of AXA with the type of support that we received from our executives. So I'd like to just quickly mention, of course, earlier on in the week, we had Phumelele here, who's our chief group procurement officer. We had Stephen Ziyaka, who's our executive from CIB, that was part of these sessions. Of course, today we've got Polusha Masela, who is the executive for this region, and Northern Cape is here right now. Of course, Akash Singh, who is our group chief compliance officer and part of the group executive, AXA executive team. He was going to be here, unfortunately, due to a loss in his family, he couldn't make it, but he has supported AXA in Africa all the way. Of course, my manager, Zwane, who's the executive whistleblowing and conduct for AXA, she's here. And of course, we've got our COO as well here, Sanjay, sitting right at the back. And of course, I'm sitting here with Nick. So I just have to say to the executive team of AXA, thank you for directing and supporting our ethics story. This week, you have showed how we as AXA continue to empower Africa's tomorrow together, one story at a time. Thank you. So to jump into today's conversation, yesterday we had a presentation from FIC, which is of course the Financial Intelligence Center, and on strategies to mitigate corruption through collaboration between the public and private sector. I already remember that yesterday. And I think the presenter from FIC, yeah, so we had the presenter from FIC yesterday, and he spoke about the enhanced collaboration between banks and the staff to ensure effective and efficient combating of financial crime. And I thought his presentation yesterday leads perfectly to the conversation that we're having today. I mean, as banks, we're in the business of trust, and it's a commitment that we take very seriously. And it's also within this context that banks have to navigate the systems that we're part of. And we have to find systems to proactively manage risks that we find within our ecosystem, which is why I'm quite excited to be facilitating this conversation between our two esteemed banks today. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Silvio. Silvio, who delivers his time as an ethics and compliance officer within Standard Bank Mozambique. Silvio brings into this conversation 15 years of client experience in the field and being actively engaged in ethical culture projects within Standard Bank Mozambique. So please give him a round of applause. And then I'm equally excited to be here with Nick Swingler, who is our current head of financial crime for AXA Group across South Africa and Africa. He's a seasoned banker with over 20 years experience in financial services, with 11 of those spent in London. And he's amazing when it comes to financial crime, and I'm hoping you all will engage with him in terms of how he explains what we are doing currently as a bank. Please give him a round of applause. So I think we'll get into the conversation then of why we're here. Thinking into what FIC explained yesterday, because I think they shared nicely the structures in terms of how FIC is working with banks and the SARB in terms of proactively managing this risk that is relating to corruption. So I think as we start, I just wanted to start with Nick so that he can give us a high-level narrative on how financial crime is being, including anti-corruption programs, is being managed within the bank. Nick?
Thank you, Phumelele. Thank you for the intro. And morning, everyone. It's great to be here. Thank you, Africa, for inviting me. It's always nice to talk about something that I'm passionate about, and also as a firm that we care deeply about. There are many victims, direct victims of financial crime, no matter whether it's bribery, corruption, wildlife trafficking. These are our people who suffer. It's money from the fiscus, it's hospitals, education. So it's not a victimless crime. It very much is a crime that impacts all of us in all of our societies. So as a bank, we have a huge role to play in contributing towards that. We can't solve it by ourselves. We can't solve or eradicate it by ourselves, but we have a big role to play. And maybe to Gareth's point, we can't be the ones on the outside pointing the finger and just pointing out things. We actually have to do things from the inside. So it's very important for us. It's a high priority for us in the firm, from the board level all the way down. What do we do? Firstly, we have to make sure as a firm that we are employing the people we want to employ. We are actually conducting the business that we want to conduct in the way we want to conduct that. So we actually have a corporate risk and a corporate liability if we don't manage that risk properly. So we spend a lot of time around managing that, so that we don't get caught up as a corporate through our people in bribery and corruption. As a firm, we have a zero appetite for any acts of bribery and corruption. It doesn't mean it doesn't happen. We do have the occasion where an employee misbehaves. The key for us there is to pick that up quickly, take action, and if there's any other corrective steps, that we'll also take those. So we have ethics program, we have a set of values, we have a lot of controls we put in place. We have practices on who we hire, we have screening processes in terms of the background checks we do on everyone. So there's a whole host of things we do to make sure that when we employ someone, when our firm interacts with the real world through our people, that we do that in the right way, and that we do not end up with issues around bribery and or corruption. So that's very important for us. It's just not for us, it's actually a global aspect. So if I sit down with our global counterparts, international banks, corporates who want to come into Africa, they also read and see that there's a problem, and it's a bigger problem, they think, with us than they do with them. But to the question earlier, it's a problem around the world. So I get many questions around what are we doing to make sure that we're good. So we also, as an entity, want to be out there showing that we are proactive and positively driving this. This conference is one of those. We also have applied 2 years ago for ISO accreditation around our program for bribery and corruption. We were accredited the previous year, again renewed this year. And we do that just so that we can show and demonstrate that there actually is realness around what we do. So that's the first component around us as a firm and our employees. Very important, zero appetite. We do have a challenge every now and then, and we deal with that rapidly. Then if I get to the other aspects of financial crime, which is basically, are we as a bank enabling or facilitating crime and criminal activity to run through the bank? So this is mostly through either our customers or potentially through our vendors. It is big, it's huge. We can stare at the problem, but we have to start to do things. So the comments about earlier on, we have to do our best, but our best is not enough. So a key part in fighting bribery and corruption is actually collaboration. I didn't attend the FIC session, but we're very fortunate in South Africa that we have set up a public-private partnership which allows the banks to engage with the FIC, and then through into law enforcement, prosecution, etc. That opens up a lot more data, a lot more information, so we can see bigger trends, broader trends. We can actually work much faster to get to an answer, and importantly, we also have exactly the same frustration as the previous question around when can we see the action, when can we see the forfeiture of assets, when will we see people in jail. Now, I can't actually take that action, but I can as a bank help the ones who can. So then it's about working closely with prosecution or law enforcement. what are you looking for? What do you need? Can we help with data analysis? Can we put some stuff together that it makes the life easier for the ones down the chain to be able to then get a successful forfeiture or successful prosecution? So there are many things that we can do, not just raising a report and filing a report with the FIC, saying here's something that's suspicious. That's an obligation I have, but what we do is we follow through on that. We make sure that we make it as easy as possible, that when we investigate, that we provide as much quality around what we're seeing, what we're finding. Those things definitely help to speed up the process. But collaboration is not just in that sense. We also collaborate quite widely. Alex, investigative journalism, it's a huge source of information for us that we sometimes can't tap into or don't have. I don't have undercover agents I can send out to make movies and pieces we can actually get more information around, but we can tap into that. Amabungani, there's some very good investigative news articles and research pieces, the WikiLeaks, etc. All of that information that we can find, we would mine, we would look at, we understand our customers involved in that, what patterns can we see, what behaviors can we see. So for me, maybe the closing comment there, Phumelele, is that this is a real risk that lives 24/7. The risk represents itself differently, so we need to understand what these risks and threats can look like, work with others to see whether are there new patterns, new behaviors. It's not always an individual, it's often the capture of government officials at a fairly high level, as Alex explained, and often it's coming off the back of organized crime as well. So it's not just someone waking up one day and saying, I'm going to pay a bribe for something. These things happen at much larger scale and actually with a lot of sophistication as well. So collaborating across the board to make sure that we can actually pick up the risks and the threats and then work out how we're going to detect them, mitigate them, and make it as easy as possible also for there to be some action or some consequences against the ones who are damaging our society. Thank you.
Following on that conversation, actually, one. Oh, okay. Okay, thanks. Following on that conversation, thank you so much, Nick. And I think the collaborative part is what even the FIC said yesterday in terms of how the banks are working together with SARB. So definitely that theme has been quite consistent. Just to follow on that narrative, I also wanted to ask Sylvia as well, if you can high level, maybe just explain to us in terms of when it comes to Standard Bank Mozambique, when it comes to anti-corruption and financial crime processes as well, how is this handled within Standard Bank Mozambique?
Thank you, Phumelele. Regarding to that, I will say that the first thing is people don't associate themselves with corruption, because you can see corruption and say, okay, does not have to do with me, I'll keep quiet. One of the initiatives like to reinforce the whistleblower, because if you see, you report it. Otherwise, you're going to be part of it. Then reinforce the anti-corruption policies and private policies as well. On the problem, one story that I will tell you, when I finished my certification, I shared with my manager that now I'm an ethics officer, and I sent an email to her. So like, okay, thank you. Can you send me back my report, please? I was like, okay. There was much excitement about it. Then I sent it to the HR department, and we were part like, yeah, that's good. Because now we have someone who can deal with the ethics issue and the bank. So we create a problem where we debate anti-corruption, where we debate money laundering properly. Not only by the courts, but we're going to make that a conversation and about the consequences, and we will show what the consequences for those who have committed crimes by the bank. Create a sort of a bench where we can debate like, this is the picture, the real picture. What we want to achieve is this. So to reach the target, we need to report, we need to avoid misbehaving, and so on. Well, and that is we're having a positive results actually, because since we've implemented those programs in terms of anti-corruption, in terms of money laundering, there was a huge reduction. I have to say. Other thing that we will find out is policies were there, but people they were not scared of the consequences. Because one thing that I've heard is funny is you will find someone committing a crime like money laundering or any other kind of bad behavior. There are no consequence mentioned, apparently. And when we ask, when there is no consequence mentioned, so okay, if people know that we have such a scandal inside the bank, our reputation will be affected. Say, okay, but our reputation is not being affected by this kind of behaviors. So why are we avoiding to expose this kind of behavior? To make sure that people will use the whistleblowing. People will not engage on this kind of activities. So since then, we have created programs like we have a program like reporting where all the graduates or the newcomers have to go through induction related to ethics and compliance, where we debate, we draw strategies. And one message, as Nick said, when you hire the right people, you also have to deliver the right message regarding to what you expect in them or how you expect them to behave inside the bank. So that it's very, very important. So that will be my thoughts around it.
Thank you. I think we note the effort that is being placed by banks in terms of dealing with financial crime and dealing with the challenges that we have within the space. And I mean, I'm sure the audience is also thinking that, you know, with all the effort that has happened, we know that South Africa and Mozambique are both grey listed by FATA, which is the Financial Action Task Force, which is the global money laundering and terrorist financing watchdog. I mean, this is not good. I mean, we note all the effort, but both Mozambique and South Africa are currently grey listed. But I think following on the earlier question, it's important to also note that this is not just a South African and Mozambican problem. We have a few other countries that are on the list, like Turkey, United Arab Emirates, Philippines, Croatia, to name a few. So it's important to know this is not just a South African problem. But I thought maybe in this panel, it's worth also just digging in terms of, you know, when Mozambique and South Africa got grey listed, you know, what did we as the banks do about this? And how are we working with key players in the industry to try and change this? So I think maybe I'll start this time around with my colleague from Standard Bank Mozambique, in terms of, you know, when Mozambique got grey listed, what was Standard Bank's response, and what are other key stakeholders doing within Mozambique to try to turn this around?
Well, in that regard, Standard Bank wouldn't act alone. Obviously, there is a collaboration among all the financial institutions in order to revert the scenario. And one thing that, when we have that news, people were like, okay, what's grey listing? Because it was not a topic. How that affects me? Okay, that affects my money. How will be my account? After something, then it's okay, we can live with that. We can live with that. You understand? So, the importance that we should be giving to that topic, I don't think we are giving. Because in terms of bringing new regulations, Mozambique have created new anti-policy regulations as well to fight corruption and anti-bribery. But on the other hand, what happens is this: if I have to create a new law to corruption, sometimes like the entities that have to create the laws, they make part of the corruption network. And so I can't create a law that strikes my business. And other hand, it's like, okay, are we creating a law? When does my mandate end? Okay, you have the due date is 2024. Okay, I'll be leaving in 23, so it's fine. The next guy will deal with it. So it's not a priority for me to deal as it should. If we, in Mozambique, and civil society has an important role on that. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, it's not a topic for civil society because we don't talk about it. it seems like, okay, central bank will deal with it. So, and banks will, financial institutions will deal with it. But on the gray list, it's more important. Recently, I think it was in Kasane, Botswana, there was a meeting where Mozambique sent a representative, so in order to present what were the solutions that were implemented in order to lift those sanctions. And one thing the representative says, don't think that we are alone in this list. So that is there. Okay, what does it mean actually? We should just keep quiet also that is there? No, we need to try to solve it in order for us to not be in that list. So these are the kinds of mentality that we need to fight first. Because having Sotak in other countries in Africa, like being there, I shouldn't be like relaxed. I should do something in order to make part of it. Just be part of that list. So as a bank, as I mentioned, we're doing everything that we can actually in collaboration with other institutions, but it's still, the corruption is something so big that people sometimes like, okay, you go, let's try to gain time in order to see how long, to be on a blacklist, how long will it take? So this is how corruption works. How long will it take for us to be in the blacklist? Not take 3-4 years. Okay, let's leave it like that. So this is the biggest concern. First, because it's not a topic on society. If we increase 1 Mexican, which is about 3 rands, on the price of the bread, you have people who will go to the streets, they will fight, they will break whatever they find. But they will tell them, we're in the gray list. Okay. Okay. So what? So first, we need to, society need to understand what does it mean being a gray list? Society need to understand that. Secondly, we need to understand the implications of, as individuals, of having a country which is on the gray list. We are in a country where most of people don't use banks as in South Africa and in other countries. People travel with money, actually. Like, I'm going to South Africa, okay, I'll take my 10,000 rand and put it in the pocket and I'll go, so I'm fine. So, still, it's not an issue for them being on the gray list. You understand? So, this is, first is work on the society, understand. So, society can also put pressure and government and central bank in order, we don't want to be there. We don't want to be there. So, because if you raise fuel price, people will strike. You will go, but they won't do it because they are not the greatest. And we as financial institutions as well will, on the corruption, if you see the network, it mentions at the stage that this corruption involves senior officers in the bank. Those senior officers as well, they not actually worried on resolving or they see how this is going to affect me. Not how this is going to affect, being a way this affects the society. So, as an ethics officer, we start to planting the seeds. Like, guys, we need to think about the impacts of our decisions. We need to think on that long-term goals. In 5-10 years, are we going to still be in the market? If yes, are we going to be the preferred bank in Mozambique? We need to start thinking about it. But, as I mentioned, corruption is there. It's not something that we're going to put policies and next day everything's going to change. It's a long way to freedom, actually. Because people now realize, okay, as I mentioned, even senior officer will ask, okay, if I have my money, I'm on the gray list, I can still use it. There is no penalty for me as a person, as a country. So thank you.
Thank you. And I think maybe as I we ask the last question to Nick. I mean, definitely, I think the South African media held South Africa to account. I think when we got on the grey list, I mean, it was definitely a big conversation within the South African space. I think all of us were aware, and we saw it coming as a country because it started getting discussed as we saw the grey listing approaching. So, but I think on that note, Nick, maybe also maybe high level in terms of what was the firm's response towards us as a country getting grey listed, and then in terms of your awareness of other key players that are trying to get us outside of this grey listing as a country.
Thanks, Mpumi. Maybe a quick step back because for South Africa it's actually quite real in terms of the impact. It's negative and it's real and it probably only becomes bigger as time goes on. So we have to be able to get off the list and show the world that we have a credible plan and that we're making progress in actually getting that plan implemented so we can get off. So when the data first developed a country, they called initial evaluation, they look at technical compliance. So do you as a country have the laws that you can actually use to prosecute? Do you have the institutions that can do this? Do you have the right structures? Do you have the regulations? So that's where it starts off with technical compliance. That we had a long time ago, and we didn't do that well. Hence why you saw the new FIC Amendment Act coming out a couple of years ago. The second evaluation following that is then effectiveness. So now that you have the structure and the laws and the institutions in place, are you effective in executing on that? There's no way to hide when you get to effectiveness. So we still had a couple of points in the most recent review around technical compliance, some terror financing laws had to be amended, some laws had to be amended to get an ultimate beneficial ownership register. So those things are now largely done in South Africa. Now we need to show effectiveness. So what does effectiveness mean? It means that we can show that we are forfeiting or forcing people to forfeit significant assets that they have acquired through the process of crime. We can show that people are feeling the consequence of being in jail. So our prosecuting authority properly capacitized to be able to show that people can actually feel the consequences. We can't tell a story around this, unfortunately. Effectiveness is measured in impact and results. So that's why the challenge for South Africa is actually significant. It is real in the sense that once you're on the grey list, especially if you want to have access to the international community in terms of raising funds, if you have large corporates to business in your country, if the large corporates from your country want to set up business overseas, they're going to hit these hurdles that are now much higher because we are perceived to be higher risk in the eyes of everyone else. It's not really true that on the day you get grey listed, you're higher risk. The risk actually was accruing over time. So most of the external counterparts who do a risk-based approach, they will know the risk on up, and they probably treated us as high risk most of the time. So you don't see a massive shift, but what you do then see is some regulations in some jurisdictions in the European Union, for example, in the UK. If you are on the grey list, you automatically enter a high risk list. That then becomes a legal obligation for institutions to do more work to analyze you, so it becomes more costly for us to do business. And we've seen that with some of the corporates in South Africa. It becomes difficult. We've seen that with individuals wanting to open up accounts overseas, companies wanting to enter new markets. So it's very difficult. So for us, the pain is real, and the pain will actually start to grow as time moves on. As a bank and as the banking industry in South Africa, the report that came out didn't really finger the banks, especially the large ones, around having significant deficiencies. We had good programs, we're doing the right things, we're reporting transactions that are suspicious or unusual. So by and large, it was okay for the big banks and also across the banking sector. As you then go into non-bank financial institutions, some of the virtual asset providers, there were some comments on that, but that's still all in the institutional space, where we have, and the banks have worked very hard with the British Authority. Each bank had
processes that Nick's team is doing is absolutely amazing. I actually get excited now and then, and I think I want to move into the crime space. I mean, initially I used to get scared, but Nick, when it comes to data, risk management processes, and how he is just interconnected in terms of what happens and the processes that he has is actually quite amazing. So thank you, Nick, and thank you so much also from my colleague here from Standard Bank Mozambique. It was an amazing conversation, and maybe let's just then catch up during the break and we can ask them more questions there.
Thank you so much. What a great timing. Very, very topical. So given the fact that we are behind schedule, we ask that you do take a 15-minute break, and please be back here by quarter to half past. Oh yeah, of course, too. I almost gave you 30 minutes instead of 15 minutes. But Nick, thank you so much for your valuable contribution. Phumelele and Sylvia, thank you both so much. So please go enjoy the refreshments outside, and we'll see you back in 15 minutes.